Hi, there's a lot of discussion just now about carbon zero, and this clip outlines what this means, why it is important, and how to get on a pathway towards it. This could be to you as an individual, as a member of a group, and that group could be a church. I'm filming now in the location of our heating oil tank, which you can see isn't there anymore. And we'll come back to that later. So then, what does carbon zero mean? Carbon here is generally a shorthand for carbon dioxide. Although CO2 is the major greenhouse gas, there are many others. The next two largest contributors to global warming are methane, natural gas, and nitrous oxide, N2O. All gases have different effects, and so this is always scaled to CO2. And so the single most important figure for carbon zero is that of CO2e, the CO2 equivalence. Currently, CO2e is about 6.7 tonnes per person per year, averaged across the world, but in a very unequal distribution. First off then, to make the biggest quick drop that can be achieved is to tackle the biggest problem, CO2, coming from the combustion of fossil fuels. We should note though that methane, CH4, and nitrous oxide contribute significantly to the overall problem. At home we have tried to do this. When we came to the house, the heating was by oil, topped up with coal or wood. But now we have switched to electricity. So why are the reductions in CO2 so important? Here in the graphs here, we see models that were calculated a few years back to try to achieve a mean global temperature rise of 1.5 degrees by the year 2100. It required some flattening off starting 10 years ago, and then a very sharp reduction in emissions now. Collectively, we have not managed all of this, so getting to that point is more urgent if we are to avoid even more catastrophic events. Reductions of all greenhouse gases are needed. We can see that methane drops relatively quickly because it has a relatively short lifetime in the atmosphere, and so that is one that could be tackled relatively quickly. Here is a pathway towards achieving carbon zero. It is general for individuals, groups or churches, and items can be taken in parallel. First, work out your starting position. Reduce the carbon footprint by switching to a green energy supplier and offset the rest. Understand your energy use in more detail. Churches and similar buildings can be assessed through the EcoChurch survey to try to work out a plan. The best starting point is your energy use in your building. Although we tend to look at costs in financial terms, our bills also indicate the energy that was consumed. Electricity units are in kilowatt hours. Gas bills can be in kilowatt hours too, or as a unit, a cubic metre of gas. That is about 11.4 kilowatt hours. If you have an old meter with an imperial unit based on a cubic feet of gas, then a unit then amounts to 0.32 kilowatt hours. In their example study of a church, climate stewards showed that nearly 2/3 of the emissions resulted from the energy use in the church, mostly heating and lighting, and so these are good choices for first steps. Different fuels produce different quantities of CO2 per kilowatt hour generated. Of the fossil fuels, natural gas produces the least. That is because a methane molecule contains 4 hydrogens per carbon, so energy is gained as 2 water molecules are formed in the burning. Heating oil approximates to 2 hydrogens per carbon, and so provides the energy from just forming 1 molecule of water per carbon. For coal, there is very little hydrogen to burn. Grid electricity has become much more carbon efficient, mostly due to the increase in wind energy and solar electricity, and now it is very similar to heating oil, and we can expect that trend to continue. Our switch at home from heating oil to electricity might seem odd looking at this. Indeed, it would have seemed all the more odd when we started this quite a few years ago. But our water and space heating comes through a heat pump, and so our emissions per kilowatt hour are probably halved, making this package to be of much lower emissions than natural gas, and we buy from a green provider. One way to reduce your carbon footprint is to change to a green energy supplier. This means that the quantity of electricity you pay for comes from wind turbines and solar panels, and not from fossil fuels or nuclear sources. Providers can use this income to invest in more renewable energy sources, thus further greening the grid. Remember, churches have business rather than domestic rates for energy. Green gas can be made from microbiological processes, but the tricky part is to get the gas mix that can be used on a grid. Understand that step has been taken in Denmark, and the process is underway to establish a local grid in Berkshire, but this is not yet available generally. For gas, heating oil and coal, the carbon zero option is by offsetting through an organisation like Climate Stewards, who reliably use this investment to generate sustainable communities and tree planting in tropical climates. There the trees grow fast. In this example, I've taken consumptions of 5,000 kilowatt hours for electricity and 10,000 kilowatt hours for gas. That would be estimated to result in about 3¾ tonnes of CO2e, and that could be offset by the donation shown. The use of electricity from a green provider reduces the offsetting cost, but offsetting the gas provides an opportunity to donate at least about £46 to assuage the emissions of 2.3 tonnes. In principle, all of those steps could be taken at one church council meeting, and you could then start to chart the effect of your measures. But we have ignored so far about 1/3 of the emissions generated by the community's activities at the church. Climate Stewards 360-degree carbon is relatively new, but it eases the assessment of a spectrum of activities typical of a church. By examining your use of energy, travel associated with church activities, food and drink at the church, the stuff you buy, waste generation and water use, an estimate of your overall carbon footprint can be made. If you have not already done so, start working through the EcoChurch survey as a church. There are 5 themes to the survey, and in terms of energy use, the buildings theme is the most pertinent for your emissions. If you have stewardship of significant quantities of land, then it is worth noting that the agricultural sector is the largest emitter of methane and nitrous oxide. Here are some ways in which you can make inroads into reducing your energy consumption and emissions. Optimize your use of heating by good temperature control, monitoring, timing, and set temperature. Insulate building components and avoid unwanted drafts. Fit low energy lighting like LEDs. Have efficient use of energy for water and space heating, perhaps including an air or ground source heat pump. Generate electricity if you have the right location, and solar power is the most common option. At our church we had an assessment of its energy performance before solar panels were added, and it is clear that our renewal project had made a difference to a very surprising extent. Recently, a group of charities has produced the Climate Emergency Toolkit. This is a free resource to provide guidance for addressing the climate emergency. You can download this from the website address shown below. We intend to add more video clips with more detail on aspects of the EcoChurch theme. Our own stories and processes can be seen on the website of Romsey Church and Winchester, Eastleigh and Romsey Circuit. There will be videos soon on giving a bit more detail about energy saving and energy generation. But thanks for watching this one so far.